Okay, last thing to get to is villains. Villains are major forces in the world. They come in three tiers. These are not just basic monsters. Monsters also come in three tiers, which is soldier, elite, and champion. Um, but and that kind of refers to their power within an encounter. Villains will also generally be champions. Um, they might not actually be that powerful in a fight in some cases, but they will generally be like champions and boss fights, or not even champions. They will be outright boss fights because boss fights are another thing in general, but they don't have to be. What they are is they are a narrative force. They impact the storyline. They are not just a tactical situation. They are a broad situation. An example of a villain who would not be a boss fight is, I think there is a is like I think there is a character in Final Fantasy VII who you have a sort of fight with him, and then he runs away and gets hit by a truck. I'm not actually sure if that is a full battle or if it is just that scene, because I haven't managed to finish Final Fantasy VII yet. Um, but yeah, that would be an example. But most of the time, villains are going to be like Sephiroth or Rufus Shinra or Garland in Final Fantasy or any of a number of other things. They do three tiers. Minor is local commanders, infamous monsters. There are things that are going to be affecting the general area, the village and surrounding areas that you're starting in. Majors is like tyrants, legendary creatures, regional foes. These are going to be like affecting multiple nations. And then Supreme. This is where, in typical JRPG fashion, you punch God or Archdemons or Eldritch Horrors or whatever. They are things that are threatening the very fabric of the world as it is. Villains have Ultima points. These are similar to Fabula points with the exception that they do not refresh. When a villain spends an Ultima point, it is gone. It does not come back. There is an exception. They can do things like to escape a scene. If a villain has Ultima points left, they can just spend one to escape, but they've spent that one. They can spend an Ultima point to recover health or mind points. They can spend Ultima points to invoke their trotes to make a success. Then there's escalation. Escalation is when a villain ramps up their threat level. So, this generally happens at 0 Ultima points when they're about to be defeated. You can choose to escalate them. Like a minor becomes a major and a major becomes a supreme. At this point, they are essentially a new threat. They get a new pool of Ultima points. And in general, you probably have them either phase 2 boss fight, though actually you can already do phase 2 boss fights without having. Boss fights don't have to have Ultima points. Boss fights don't necessarily have to be villains, but they might. They might. They probably will. But the suggested is you probably want between 4 and I think 6. Is either 4 and 6 or 4 and 8 escalations in a single campaign. Because if you escalate too often, it just gets frustrating. But escalating sometimes is a good narrative, like, oh, we get to continue fighting this bad guy. He's going to be a problem later. Supreme villains cannot escalate because there's nowhere for them to go. So when a supreme villain runs out of Ultima points, they are going down or they are taking you down. One of the two. So that's villains, and that kind of wraps up Fabula Ultima.